hold some sort of allegiance to one particular party.
I suppose it is true that the generation of older voters who would vote for the ruling party without question, these are diminishing in number. And certainly, I think the percentage of swing voters is larger now. I think that's a good thing for Singapore as a whole, because political parties, whether you're ruling or opposition, you would be always on the alert to ensure that you're relevant to the electorate at any point in time. And I think ultimately Singaporeans will benefit from this.
In the 2011 generations or the 2000 generations, when you have met most of the basic needs like housing, jobs and physical security, then people will also look forward to other things that are perhaps of a higher order, the ability to express themselves in other ways.
And this is the challenge post-2011 GE for politicians and citizenry alike. Both sides have to deal with raised expectations and new demands, fueled in part by the social media, which has given immediate access to politicians and their public. However, even the pundits are divided on the impact of this phenomenon on the politicization of the populace.
Yes, the new media is not only enabling the government and the citizen to communicate, but it is also putting new pressures on accountability and transparency. And therefore, the government has to now manage the public affairs in a different way than it managed in the past. You just have to be better prepared for the tough question that any citizen can now pose.
I think besides the internet and Web 2.0 technologies like Facebook and so on, there's also a general increase in the education level of Singaporeans. And it is a very well-established fact that as society becomes more educated, becomes more affluent, people want more control over their own lives, they want more say and more autonomy. And so inevitably, even without the internet, we would have seen this change. It's just that the internet has really accelerated the pace.
I think that's why the internet and the social media is such an important issue, because it suddenly makes this space available. So I think the outburst of expression on social media, it's not because this is somehow a new generation thing. I just think that now space is available. So all the unexpressed or unpublished, edited out public opinions is now all on the internet.
Your needs are...
Without doubt, there has been change. This can be seen from the fall in the share of the vote for the ruling party, a GRC now run by the Opposition Workers' Party, and the PAP winning back Potong Pasir after 27 years. GE 2011 was significant for these. The reasons for change have been discussed extensively. Some attribute these to a combination of factors. A younger, more educated populace, with easy access to tools to share information on the internet and tools to amplify their voices as well. The demographics tell an interesting story. In 2011, 1 out of 4 voters were born after 1975. Many were first-time voters. They are young, wired, and educated. People who look for answers and create their own answers and share them with their friends. Just who are they? Today, 24-year-old Muna and 23-year-old Hersi are in school to record an episode of their vlog series, Sex Appeal and Jokes.
Hello, ChannelNewsAsia.
A series that pokes fun at a variety of topics, from foreign workers to SMRT breakdowns.
Are we talking about the government?
The craziness is cranked up. It's a comedy, satire, and a social commentary all rolled in.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, sir. My name is Latisha, and Latisha is aware that a lot of Singaporeans don't like foreign workers in Singapore. They say we take the jobs for them. A lot of young Singaporeans who are first-time voting are so clueless about the political scene in Singapore. And I must admit, we both are clueless as well. So I told Muna, I said, we need to sit down and come up with a video just to entice viewers and make sure that our younger generation just at the very least go, oh, that's an interesting thing, general election, I never thought about it. We didn't have a political agenda really with our videos. What we wanted people to do is just be enlightened about the whole situation, especially first-time voters.
But more importantly, the reason why we ventured into this topic is because this year we finally get to vote!
15,000 subscribers. More than 3 million views later, the duo are one of several of Singapore's YouTube sensations.
I saw a lot of people on our Facebook page and our Facebook account started to having shout-outs with regards to elections and their opinions online. So, as much as it goes, I think it did influence a little bit about what people had to say, especially our younger voters.
Beyond the new media, art also began to mirror life. Playwright Alfian Saad put together a play called Cooling Off Day after the general election. It was his first politically themed play in his 16-year theatre career. He spoke to 35 Singaporeans from varying backgrounds for his on-stage docudrama.
I, from all unit, I vote WP. WP. White pay. PAP. Poor also pay. SDP. So don't pay. Alphabet lah. MRT. Makan. Relax. Tidur. ATM. Always take money. GST. Go. Squeeze them. PWD. Purposely want to dig. PUB. Pay until broke.
I think the play reflects a momentous but also sort of subtle change in how Singaporeans perceive their own sense of enfranchisement in local politics. And you can sense that people were more willing to talk. People were sensing that they had much more of a stake in the elections. In the past, I think election was a bit of a spectator sport. I think people felt this time there was a real sense of a participatory democracy.
I get very confused if I have to vote for GRC. Hey, you tell me, one man, one vote. But if you want to give me 5 candidates, then you better also give me 5 votes.
That's a weird way of thinking about the future.
In the past year, 6 politically themed plays have been staged, feeding perhaps a new and greater appetite in the Singapore audience for such fare.
I'm a firm believer that you've got to love your neighborhood. Then you love your community. Then you love your nation. You don't start by loving the nation first. That's going backwards.
I am not sure if Cooling Off Day would have been staged, let's say in 2006. I wouldn't say provocative, but it does talk about issues that we wouldn't normally hear and haven't really heard in the last 10, 20 years. I think political plays in Singapore have always had to be a lot more subtle or hiding behind metaphors, and something like Cooling Off Day was very direct, and some of the interviewees were very critical. So in that sense, it's quite refreshing to hear it on stage.
On the political stage, MPs have had to cope with the change in the expectations not only of a younger, wide electorate. In the past year, they've also had to contend with more demanding residents. Find out how new politicians adapted to these expectations after the GE. He isn't quite a YouTube sensation, but this video gathered 13,000 views within a few days. 33-year-old newly minted Member of Parliament Vikram Nair is probably best known for drinking water from the water tank where a body was found. Fresh out of elections, Vikram had to deal with his first crisis. The body of an Indonesian maid was found in a rooftop water tank in Woodlands. A resident posted on his Facebook page urging him to come to the former's house to drink the questionable water. Vikram did just that the very next day, and the clip of him assuring his residents with that sip went viral.
When he did drink the water, right, I thought that was a very gutsy move. And it actually convinced and comforted a lot of residents that the water is good enough to consume.
The incident perhaps represents how things have changed between politicians and their voters. Politicians are using social media to solicit views, news about policy changes, and reach out. Even the Prime Minister has entered the brave new world of social media. A world where people will have direct access to their elected politicians 24/7.
I would like to create more platforms for my residents to come forward, because ultimately they're the people that I represent. I am very, very open to discussing issues. Even if people disagree with me, I'm quite happy to talk to them.
28-year-old Tin Pei Ling has learned the hard way about the power of the media. The youngest PAP candidate in the 2011 GE, she had to deal with a barrage of online criticism over posts on her Facebook page before her candidacy was announced, to her inexperience and youth. 1 year on, she attracts a disproportionate amount of attention amongst netizens. Of all MPs, her Facebook page attracts the most comments, though today they are not mostly negative.
For criticisms that were constructive, I take them in seriously, and I want to work on those areas to improve myself. But at the same time, ultimately, there were two things that really kept me going. One, there are larger issues out there. There's Singaporeans with problems, and those are more important, really. And the second thing is that knowing that there are people around me, including people whom I've not known personally, giving me their encouragement and support, that helps, and that gave me the strength to continue and stand firm in what I believe in.
She thinks it's important to respond to comments so that netizens know that she is reading them and finds them helpful in understanding their views. Her main focus in the ward is to help her residents. 1 in 3 people in her ward are aged 50 and above. She started a program to help the elderly pay for their medical bills in response to some comments on Facebook. The project has already raised 150,000 Singapore dollars. Since she came into office, she's started 5 different projects that cater to almost every slice of the demographic pie in her ward.
I did have to work harder because on the one hand I recognize that there are people who are unsure of what value could I bring to them. Being the youngest PAP candidate, I think it is a natural, inevitable question, and to want to do my best, to want to serve the people, I have to prove to them, to give them the confidence so that they can lay their trust in me. And so from that perspective, I am determined to work hard and really to serve my people, to improve lives.
MPs from the ruling party and the Workers' Party, or WP, have been quietly finding ways to connect with residents on the ground.
I think personal engagement is very important because people need to know who their MP is and what this MP stands for. Otherwise, you could put a town councillor in charge of the feedback process, but the MP has to take leadership, has to take personal responsibility and ensure that he's reaching out to his residents.
In Aljunied GRC, the WP has built its own grassroots network, the Aljunied Constituency Committee, to organize activities for residents. In fact, many of the activities wouldn't be out of place in a PAP ward. MP Pritam Singh says he's organized walks to encourage healthy lifestyle habits amongst residents in Yunus, and worked on plans to encourage the elderly to come forward for health screening. While a few months back, the entire team of Aljunied MPs went to Malaysia with their residents for a durian feast. Each MP has tried to develop his or her own style of engagement. For Mr. Pritam, this means going on his walkabouts alone, without an entourage.
People don't have to worry about or be intimidated by 4 or 5 grassroots representatives or something like that. It's very straightforward, frank, bold. Some people, if they don't like what's happening, they'll tell you straight, and I like that. I personally think that's a good way of engagement, and that's one important strategy which I do employ, and I do employ quite a lot.
In the immediate aftermath of the general election, the PAP government moved swiftly to address what it saw were grievances which led to its electoral loss. The Prime Minister also promised more and better engagement with the public.
Some people may think that this is so different from the past. I don't share the view. I don't see this as a paradigm shift. I see this as greater emphasis on certain areas than before, and that is because the problems are greater, the grievances are more intense, more acute. But this government has mostly been responsive to major complaints most of its time. But as a whole, the PAP government has become very responsive, and rather quickly so, because of what happened in the last elections. And the 40% loss is a very compelling argument to do it right and do it quick and do it better than the past. But fundamentally, I don't think politicians of a certain stripe can change overnight, because it is a culture, and you have to nurture this culture over a period of time. And we have to wait much longer before we can come to a definitive judgment as to whether Singapore politics has changed significantly or dramatically from the past.
Whether there has been a dramatic, fundamental change or not, the People's Action Party set out to improve its engagement strategy post-election. MPs were encouraged to reach out more and express their views frankly to help effect change from within the party. At a party convention held 6 months after the election, over 1,000 cadres focused on what the party felt must be set right.
So the success in reinventing the party depends on all of our members. Every member has a role to play. It requires a shift in our mindsets, in our behaviors, among the leaders, to reach out to many more activists and volunteers, to be more inclusive and approachable, and to be seen to be so. MPs and backbenchers too need to play bigger roles, stepping up, speaking up, reaching out.
MP Denise Phua was highlighted by the Prime Minister as an example of an MP who has adopted ground-up initiatives that must be embraced by the new PAP. Ms. Phua has worked on projects to ease traffic congestion and improve state care for the special needs community.
I guess I'm governed by what I call the 3 C's. My conscience, to do the right thing even when no one is watching. 2, to have courage to speak up and to address issues that I feel are not right. And 3, in exercising that courage, to also have consideration that me and mine are not the only ones having needs or are suffering, but there are many other stakeholders as well, especially those who are less blessed than I am or we are.
Post the 2011 GE, she's continued her work in Kampong Glam to help disadvantaged households and needy students.
The new PAP also has to be a PAP that I guess get even closer to the people, to be able to feel the ground even better, to again adopt channels that are communication channels that are more direct, and to just hear views from people and accept them and incorporate them in policy makings and so forth.
So how is everything here?
I think it's actually fine, except that sometimes the corridor gets a bit dirty, so then it takes quite some time to notice it and clean it.
Okay.
So maybe, if they
So
clean it
corridor,
more,
right?
yeah.
Vikram Nair takes the call to reach out very seriously. 2 times a week, he does the traditional block visit.
But the lorry is actually loading and unloading lah. No, it's not. It's parked there. Okay, good. Look into the enforcement.
He too has noticed the residents today are more vocal when he meets them.
Can.
Okay, anything else? Or? Okay, well, if there's anything else, you can also find me at Block 55. I mean, I know some of the more senior MPs who say when they go house visits, they get almost no feedback. I mean, I would say I get feedback from at least 30 to 40% of the households I visit. But that's, that's useful to me. It, lets me know what needs to be done.
Vikram tells us he attends every single event organized by his grassroots in a bid to better understand and engage a community who wants to be heard.
It's definitely important for the MP to be around whenever we have events like this because it is an opportunity for us to raise our issues to him.
Beyond municipal issues, some felt that the government had not sufficiently engaged the population on complex issues.
The population of Singapore has actually expanded very radically in about 10 years. I mean, we moved from about 4 million people in the early 2000s. By the end of the decade, it's like 5.3 million people. That's adding a lot of people onto the island. That stressed a lot of the social amenities, public transportations, caused prices to go up, particularly in housing sector. So I think those are the two trends that were not sort of anticipated. The third trend that is already known for a long time was the aging population at a much faster rate, along with declining birth rate. So I think those are the three fairly major issues that have seen public expressions.
No, because I need other options going forward for our country. And going forward, there are more and more issues that we need to grapple with, which may not be easy.
Once every month, Acting Minister Chan Chun Seng meets with an average of 50 to 80 Singaporeans from all walks of life at the Buona Vista Community Club. He listens to residents and tries to help them understand government policies and the trade-offs and choices that have to be made.
I would really hope that as Singapore evolves and matures as a society, we will have more robust discussion on the choices facing our country, rather than superficial slogans about what to do. Because this country is too important, too precious for us to just leave it to slogans.
This is Mr. Chan's 10th session.
Bus driver is the next category. They are not exactly the bottom 20%.
Today's agenda, to discuss how to prop up the wages of the lower income groups in society.
If I may use an analogy from eating a pizza. Recently you find a new generation of pizza shop. It's quite interesting. You go in there, you want to try out different things. You tell the chef, they can prepare it differently for you. Sometimes you can even be involved in the making of the pizza yourself. And at the end of the day, you eat what you have done for yourself. That probably reflects the way which our society is evolving. I think people are not just happy to have solutions, even if they are good solutions presented to them. They want to know how this solution is developed, what were the considerations behind the development of this solution, and if they can, in some way, participate in the process even.
If you don't know what are the ideas being implemented now, later when I go around, I will go and share with you some of the things that are already done. Okay? Boleh? Can I? Yeah.
27-year-old Xiong Sheng has attended 4 of Mr. Chan's informal policy discussions. He says these sessions provide him with information that go beyond the headlines. He travels from Woodlands to Buona Vista just to try to understand the thinking behind government policies.
I do have a feeling that when he listens, when he picks up these ideas, when he go back to design policies and decide on policies, I believe that he actually do think through all these inputs that he has received, and that makes me feel that you are a stakeholder. I benefit by learning that there are actually many perspectives to any issue, and there's no perfect policy that can please everybody. So for every policy, there's always a trade-off, there's always short-term and long-term consequences.
And I see that as encouraging, right? It gives them direct feedback, unfiltered by civil servants. It gives them the ability to explain things in their own words, and it makes politicians it can make politicians much more authentic. And that is always very important if you want to connect with voters.
Most of the time you can see that a lot of intentions from the government may get misunderstood throughout the process, and through this new informal policy dialogue, when I have opportunity to interact with him directly, and sometimes I'm asking what I read in the newspaper, etc., and you can hear directly from the minister why certain policies are in place, and he would actually explain and clarify. It's important to understand how these policies are made so that we can reduce the emotional aspect when you react to these policies, and think about the rationale and the logic behind it, whether it's for the long-term good for the country or for yourself, and definitely for your future generation.
When we come back, the future generation in Aljunied and Potong Pasir. Find out how the winds of change have affected the two constituencies. Undercurrents that run beneath. Aljunied Group Representation constituency is the first to be won by an opposition party. Just by that fact alone, it's likely to draw inordinate attention as the PAP makes plans to try to win it back, while the Workers' Party intends to prove to residents that they made the right choice.
We have promised to work extra hard to make sure that things function well in the constituency. By that, we look at town management as one in the HDB estates. Secondly, also constituency engagement, for us to keep in constant contact with the residents to have their pulse and to know what are the concerns and desires. Well, I think so far in the last 1 year, my assessment is that we have managed reasonably well.
According to Ms. Lim, getting municipal politics right was a priority for the party in the first 6 months after election. In the last 1 year, 23-year-old Wan Ling has seen few changes in her estate. She says upgrading works have proceeded as planned, and the estate is as clean as it always was. To Wan Ling, this is probably the most significant difference.
I'm seeing more letters from the Workers' Party addressed to the residents in this area, and I appreciate it. I really think it shows us that they really care.
What I do is I have a letter for residents in English and in Mandarin, just to let them know what's happening. And usually from there, residents would email me, or they'll call the town council. They'll try and get in touch with me and take on the process of finding out more what's happening, give their input.
7th May 2012 marks a year from the day the WP took over Aljunied. This photo session is organized to commemorate that event.
I was proud that the Aljunied voters put their trust in us, but I think I quickly came to the realization that this is not blind faith, but there is an expectation of delivery of something, and something which is tangible to them.
For 9 days last May, Wan Ling felt that she held the fate of the opposition in her hands.
I want to make sure that I know what I'm doing. I didn't want to oppose or stick to the current party for the sake of familiarity or for the sake of opposing.
I declare Chen Shou Mao, Silver Lim.
I think, for anyone who is in opposition politics in Singapore, the landscape is such that one can never be assured of any victories. And I personally believe that you need to go into it with a certain belief in the process as well, that it is important for Singaporeans to make sure that elections have some value, that they have choices, and for us to offer ourselves as part of that choice, I think it itself is meaningful. And in the end, if the end result comes that there's a victory, I think it is a bonus and something that will have to be cherished.
Spoke to some other people, and they also mentioned that the PAP has to them, PAP has served them really well, so they are willing to continue to trust them, and they didn't really want to change. They didn't really have the intention to, as in they weren't really looking forward to a change anyway, and everything is stable.
我觉得很失望，为什么会失去我们一个这么好的 MP 为我们服务这么久了，所以我感觉到很失望，也没有什么话好讲了，还是照旧以前这么样比为我们做事比较好一点。
52-year-old Chow Tang-Wa is 29 years older than Wan Ling. He has lived in Aljunied for the last 13 years. He's voted 3 times, each time for the ruling party, because of the stability and prosperity that Singapore has enjoyed all these years. He says he and his friends were surprised that the opposition managed to win the GRC.
因为我感觉他不会输，因为他对我们人民不错啊，他要的东西他的供应到做到给我们，所以我们人民需要什么电梯什么他都做得很好，为我们这个区，他已经用了很大的力来帮助我们了，所以我感觉他不会输啦。现在是不同了啦，新加坡年轻人比较多了，所以他们的想法不一样。
Looking back, it is not about the campaign. It is about going back to knowing your electorate and managing them, communicating with them, and connecting with them. You can do all the good you can, but it could be one event or one incident, and with a very astute opposition, that would be the salt on the wound that could be fatal. In Aljunied, we paid that price.
Victor Lai and his team are determined to win Aljunied GRC back in the next election. This 49-year-old has been a party member since 2001, and he has worked as a key activist with former Foreign Affairs Minister Mr. George Yeo in Aljunied for over a decade. Over the past few months, the PAP has made a few significant moves in the Aljunied GRC. Former PAP party chairman Lim Boon Heng has been appointed to help the team, sharing with them his wealth of experience.
Many people ask me the question, how are we going to win back Aljunied? To me, it is not about the ballot box. It's about doing the right thing and doing our best for the people. And ultimately, winning or not, it will be the decision of the people.
In a neighboring constituency, evidence that political winds blow both ways. This is Potong Pasir, now back in the hands of the PAP. The Singapore People's Party, or SPP, lost its stronghold of the Potong Pasir single-member constituency by a sliver of a margin. The party did not want to comment on what it's been doing in the last year.
After 27 years, finally it came back to us, and I've got many youngsters who live here that came to me and said, you know, Sito, for all my life, I've never lived in a PAP ward, and this is the first time it happened. I think what it means, in 5 years' time, we have to have a better, more pleasant and happier home for everyone in Potong Pasir. We must deliver on this.
Since the GE is over, I realized that there are more major infrastructure being in place in Potong Pasir, meaning there's some scaffolding for the re-roofing repairs, and also the lift upgrading. This is actually due to the fact that during his election campaign, Mr. Sito actually said that these are the things that is going to be done. So since that he's executing, it's good to say that he's executing some of it. At the beginning of the new term as an MP.
25-year-old Jackie, also a first-time voter, has been serving in Meet the People sessions since PAP's Sito Yipin took over as Member of Parliament for the single-member constituency.
Mr. Sito is actually very encouraging to the young people like me who's able to come out of our comfort zone and to really help out in grassroots events.
Hello. Who are you in? As you know, I won by a mere 114 votes. Some of the people still openly demonstrate that they do not support us. But that does not mean that I don't serve them. because to me, the relationship should not be about one where, because I do this for you, you vote for me.
I'm very, very happy.
Why are you very happy?
See you happy.
While he hasn't won over the whole of Potong Pasir, Mr. Sito has attracted many young people with his mission of service. Jackie has noticed a 20% increase in the number of young people stepping up to serve in the grassroots.
Because we have 3 writers today, so maybe
I feel that young people are now more politically aware. It's due to this general election in particular. With Facebook and social media so popular around, it opened up actually a brand new avenue for the young to be more aware of what is really happening around, both in Singapore and in the world.
Is it just the young? What else has changed in the psyche of a Singaporean? When we come back.
They're a lot more active and vocal and open. So for the first time, you see a lot of people using their real names to speak to say their opinions and to speak their minds. And that is very significant because it shows that to a very large extent, the climate of fear is past.
I also noticed, for instance, that people are now more open about their links with parties such as ours. Happy to be linked to Workers' Party, to come forward to help us in various ways. Sometimes even to talk about their vote for opposition parties. So in that sense, the climate, I think, is more open now, and it is probably easier for opposition parties to get more manpower and help.
For the ruling party, this means it has to go beyond engagement to show that it is indeed listening to the population and delivering on what it wants. In the past year, several policy changes have been announced which have dealt with issues such as slowing down the influx of foreign workers, overcrowding on public transport, housing policy, and priority in the allocation of primary school places to Singaporeans.
The government will provide funding for 550 buses, while the public bus operators will add another 250 buses. This significant increase in bus capacity will reduce crowding and waiting times. Singaporeans will receive healthcare when we need it. Our healthcare services will be of good quality, and Singaporeans will be able to afford such services.
This year, we are launching another 25,000 BTO flats. As the number of marriages eligible for BTO flats is about 15,000 a year.
We will moderate and manage the foreign workers, but we have to bring in enough so that we have the manpower and the talent to grow and to prosper.
I do feel the government, both the civil servants and the political leaders from the ruling party, are more willing to look at some of the sacred cows, willing to take a bit more risk, and willing to sometimes even forego some of the longer term interests, the paternalistic views it has regarding housing, regarding even education, and to exchange it for shorter gains, to exchange it for shorter gains, and to be more sensitive to the shorter term pains of the population.
Is there a price for engagement? If the dead could speak, what would they say about the furore over the plan to reclaim Bukit Brown? Interest groups campaigned to halt bulldozers from replacing this slice of heritage with a road.
Higher priority for heritage conservation. What were the other options?
We considered widening Bonnie Road.
There was almost a year of public engagement.
Encroached into the central catchment.
I've been surprised at their willingness to cooperate sometimes with the civic groups. It shows after the election, the government realized that the new citizens, they also have an active voice, and it's, as the new social media develop, more and more people are able to connect with each other much more rapidly and much more quicker than in the past.
This is
after the debate, the decision was still that the cemetery had to go. But the government made a concession, and the alignment of a new road, which is to cut across the site, was changed so that it would bypass a cluster of graves and have minimal impact on the existing terrain. This bridge, instead of the road, would probably cost a significant amount of money more to build. However, the interest groups didn't seem satisfied and criticized the process as perfunctory. Eventually, the discussion was settled online. The Bukit Brown saga is an example of how government and citizens are now trying to negotiate their way around a new relationship in a new environment. One pitfall can be a mismatch of expectations, as citizens can mistakenly equate consultation with empowerment.
Supposing I, as a minister, goes out and solicit feedback from, say, 10 parties, and each of these 10 parties give me one particular suggestion. But at the end of the day, we have to all sit down, discuss these 10 suggestions, but eventually we may all have to decide on one particular suggestion as the way forward, or we may find another number 11 suggestion. But having said that, does it mean that the 9 suggestions and the 9 persons who have participated in the process have not contributed to the consultation process? Well, I think not. But if the 9 people walked away and feel that, oh, you didn't take my suggestion and because of that you didn't listen to me, then I think that would not do justice to the entire process.
So whilst the government has become more consultative and accommodating, this could also embolden some citizens to make louder demands. In this new normal, MPs and grassroots leaders have to deal with a changing reality of life here, a more outspoken electorate.
Future elections will be tougher for ruling party. I guess with a more vocal and probably more demanding electorate, it will be hard to try to please everyone. As they say, the sure way to failure is to try to please everyone.
The expectations are also much higher. They demand or they expect MPs to be present physically or even online, to be more visible, and to even respond faster than usual. This is quite a departure from what I observed from the past, whereby Singaporeans or residents are more willing to give a little bit more leeway and more time, and so before you come back with an answer, or perhaps even are agreeable to take no for an answer, but in the recent times there will be a little bit more of a to and fro exchange of opinions and perhaps even a negotiation.
Theatre actress Pamela Wee is trying to save the Buona Vista swimming pool. She's collected more than 70 signatures and presented the petition to Acting Minister Chan Chun Sing.
I just didn't want to be an apathetic Singaporean who just sits by and just says, oh, they're going to tear down the pool, so we'll just wait for it to happen. And I think that it matters if you feel a certain way about something. It matters if you speak up or not. Because if everyone just keeps quiet, then no voices will ever be heard. And even if you feel that it's futile, one should always say what one feels, really feels.
In the discussion of the attempt to save a swimming pool in the local vicinity, what is really the issue at hand? So that is the first step of what we call a common problem definition. Having defined the issue collectively, then we need to go forth into stage 2 where we look for a diversity of ideas to respond to those challenges that we have mentioned. We need to then move on to the stage 3, which is about a convergence of the ideas and choosing some ideas to take the country or the local community forward down there. If we can define the problem clearly to the residents and they also share in the same definition of the problem, then I think when they go forth to seek ideas, it will be much, much easier for us to find a convergence of where we should go forward together.
A higher level of citizen activism means more causes, more engagement, and also more time spent dealing with differing views. This is new normal, and something both society and government have to come to grips with.
As far as ministers getting more consultative is concerned, I think there's probably more pros than cons. I mean, I think the chief downside would be that it can slow the policy-making process down. But I think by and large, because our party still has a strong majority in Parliament, the policy-making process itself has not been slowed down too much. But at the same time, you have the benefits of ministers getting in a lot of feedback, trying to synthesize that, but still being able to make a decision relatively quickly. So all in all, I think we've probably got the balance in just about the right place right now.
I think that Singaporeans are reasonable enough to discern between urgent matters and things which can take a bit more time. And I believe that they can understand if a quick decision needs to be made because of certain exigency, that would have to be done. Of course, subsequent to that, look and constantly review to see if refinement is made. But of course, for things that don't really need to be rushed, it's always, I think, good governance to engage people and to see whether, there are other answers which perhaps the policymakers had not thought of.
I think we can build on this passion and desire to want to contribute. What we can do and what we need to do more is to share with people what are the considerations behind us making certain choices, what are the constraints we face, what are the trade-offs that may come with any of the choices that we make. Then if we can involve our people in this whole process, then I think that sense of ownership for that decision that is ultimately made will be that much greater.
GE 2011 will be remembered for several things. It was the most contested election since 1972, with 82 out of 87 seats contested. It featured some of the youngest political candidates ever. It saw the loss of a GRC to an opposition team. Wresting back of Potong Pasir by the ruling party, an opposition stronghold for the last 27 years. What of the next election? What do Singaporeans hope to see?
I hope that by the next GE, Singapore will have even stronger opposition parties.
Singaporeans, regardless of your political leanings, will have a government that cares for Singaporeans.
Singapore will have a media with old media and new media, and we won't be able to tell the difference.
There would be a lot more space for alternative voices in Singapore.
Potong Pasir will be a better home for everybody. I hope that by the next GE, Singapore will have even more committed and capable people coming forth to serve in leadership position for this country.